I suppose if I were you, I'd have to kill myself. Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 72 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about table etiquette. My name is Nathan Pottle and thank you so much for joining me today. It's kind of crazy in my house right now. I'm getting ready to hop on a flight tomorrow, so I gotta pack and do all this other stuff, but at the same time we're rearranging our house, and I almost wasn't able to record because I'd put my recorder somewhere as I was moving offices from one room to the other, and I could not remember where I had put it, and everything is different, so it took me a while to find it, but thankfully I did. So I'm sitting here able to record and talk about today's episode. Today I'm talking about movie weddings, and that is because, like I said, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to Ontario, the other side of the country, and I am going to my brother's wedding. So Thomas and Vanessa, congratulations. I'm very excited to attend your guys' wedding and actually kind of get out of the house, and I've never been to Ontario before. We're going to go to Niagara Falls and check that out. So even among COVID and all this stuff, you're still able to do things just on a smaller scale. As long as we're wearing masks and being healthy, that's what matters. So I'm super excited to go out there and do that. But today I want to talk about movie weddings because it's in theme with what I'm doing in my life right now. So I've got my top 5 favorite movie weddings that I'm going to talk about today, and then that's going to be the whole thing. So I'll stop wasting time telling you guys about my life. Why don't I just talk about them right now? Number 5 on my list of favorite movie weddings is from The Godfather. Now, I talked about The Godfather last week, talking about it again today, this week. The thing about this wedding, though, is you don't really see the actual wedding itself. You're just witnessing the celebration, the reception, as it were. And it is in the yard of the house of The Godfather. And while everyone is outside celebrating the wedding, having a great time, he is inside speaking with people and having meetings. And it's traditional to talk to the father of the bride on the wedding day and get favors from him or something like that. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but people are sitting with them and meeting with him, trying to get things from him, basically, because he's a mobster, he's a crime family lord. And so then you have the famous line from that scene where he's like, "You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding, asking me for a favor." And it's a very good scene. It's a very good opening scene to a movie. But then after he has that scene with that guy, and he leaves and he goes to attend, he dances with his daughter, everyone's having a good time, all of these Italian mobsters just hanging out, going crazy. They're parked everywhere on the street. There's one part where an officer is wanting all the cars to be moved, and there are these mobster guys who are just yelling at all of the traffic cops, like, "No, we're not moving our cars, we're having a wedding, get out of here, what do you think you're doing?" There's one photographer at the wedding at one point who's taking a picture of a guy, and this Italian mobster is like, "No, forget it," and his bodyguard takes the camera and smashes it to pieces because you're not allowed any kind of photographic evidence of these mobsters all being together or something like that. It's absolutely crazy. And normally when you look at families like this, you'd be like, "Oh, like, they're despicable people, why should I be celebrating?" But they are still a family, and they care about each other. And what really kind of makes that known in this scene is there's a section kind of near the end of the wedding scene where everyone's getting together for a large family photo, and Al Pacino's character Michael is not there, and the Godfather is just like, "Nope, we are not taking our family photo without Michael. Where is he? Let's get him in here." And so then they finally track Michael down and they get him in the photo, but he brings in his girlfriend and everyone's like, "What are you doing? You're like, let's get her out of this photo." But he's insistent, "Nah, my girlfriend's in this photo because she's here attending the wedding with me." And then that's where we get the introduction to Michael's character and who he is and what he wants with his life. He doesn't want to be part of the crime family. And then things happen where he's kind of sucked into it at the end very reluctantly. And so there's all kinds of things going on at this wedding reception that sets up the rest of the story and gives you a really good foundation for the movie itself. So that's why it's a great movie wedding. It's number 5 on my list. I'll move on to number 4 now. Number 4 is from Crazy Rich Asians, which came out in 2018. The only reason that this wedding is entire on the list is for one, because I like other ones better, and two, because this wedding is not about the main characters. It is the main characters going to attend this wedding, and oh my goodness, is this wedding insane. Now, obviously, the movie is called Crazy Rich Asians. Now, it doesn't mean that they're crazy rich or that they're crazy and they're rich. I think it means both, because these guys are just over the top with absolutely everything. If you have seen the movie, they do the bachelorette party and the bachelor party, and they're just crazy. I don't even know any other way to describe it. It's just so over the top, and so much money must have been spent. But to these guys, it's not even that much money. They're just like, throw money at it and let's do something extravagant and ridiculous. And what I like about this wedding too is we do actually get to see the wedding itself, and it's so crazy. So when they start off the wedding, everyone walks down the aisle, but then when the bride comes down the aisle, all the lights get turned down and everyone has these like long curved reeds with lights on the end, and they put water down the aisle, so it looks like the bride is walking down through this almost lily pad water area. What's the name of that I'm trying to think of? Like a grove? Not quite a grove, but it's not a swamp either, because swamp has a negative connotation. It's some kind of water area, like a nice little a glade, if you will, that she's walking through, and it looks beautiful, and the song that's being performed and sung is beautiful, and there's like princesses attending this wedding. It's absolutely crazy, and it's over the top, and it's beautiful to look at. It's wonderfully shot. And what the actual wedding itself does really well is that it's able to balance the focus, is what I meant to say. It's able to balance the focus of the couple getting married, but also the couple who are the main characters of the story, of Rachel and Nick. You get to see the vows being performed, but then there's glances and looks between Rachel and Nick, because they're not sitting together with the wedding. Rachel is sitting with a princess or a queen or some kind of royal dignitary who's also really smart, and then Nick is the best man at the wedding. But they're able to exchange glances and have very specific camera shots that really cement in their relationship, but also we can focus on the wedding itself. It's a really well done scene, and then obviously they have the reception, which is also very over the top. Lots of partying, lots of really extravagant food going on. This wedding, more than any of the other ones on this list, is certainly the most extravagant by far, and it deserves to be on my list here. So that's number 4, The Wedding from Crazy Rich Asians. We'll move on to my third favorite movie wedding, and this is from the movie The Father of the Bride, which came out in 1991. This is the one starring Steve Martin, which is a remake of the movie Father of the Bride, which I believe came out in 1950 or 1951. Not 100% sure, but this movie is hilarious. Basically, it's about Steve Martin's character. His daughter is getting married, and he has to deal with the emotional trauma that comes with letting go of your daughter and letting her like be her own woman and get married and kind of sever those ties. And he is really struggling with this because he had such a close relationship with his daughter while they were growing up, because they only had the one child, and then many years later they had a second child. So he's just really struggling to let go, and meeting with her fiance's parents is really difficult for him, and he gets into all of these situations. He then just kind of like snaps later in the movie, and there's one really funny scene where he is in the grocery store and he's just freaking out because you buy hot dogs in packs of 8 and you buy hot dog buns in packs of 12 and he is just losing it. So he's like, why can't you buy 8 hot dogs and 8 hot dog buns and just be done with it? So he is ripping open packages of the hot dog buns and pulling 4 out and throwing them on the ground so that he can have 8 hot dog buns and 8 hot dogs and not be screwed over by the hot dog bun company and the hot dog company, because they've teamed up. They're in cahoots, according to him. It's really funny. It's hilarious. I love that scene. But there are a whole lot of other really funny things going on in this movie. When they meet the wedding planner, who's played by Martin Short, who is a Canadian treasure, he plays the character of Frank. Not Frank, Frank. And this wedding planner, he is just exuberant and over the top, and everything that he does is 110%, and he looks at the time frame of the wedding and how much time he has to plan things, and he only has 5 months, and he's going like, "Oh, hello, that's 5 months," and he talks with a very funny accent. He looked, I just talking like Frank. Every time he's on screen, he's very, very funny, and Steve Martin's character is having trouble understanding him, and he says at one point, like, this guy should come with subtitles because like, I don't know what he's saying or what I'm agreeing to, and all of the money that I'm spending on him. This guy is so expensive, and this fancy cake, but at the same time, the wedding looks super tacky because this movie came out in the 90s, so it's all 90s fashion, and like pink and hearts and lace and everything all over the place. They have a, a swan sculpture made out of ice in this movie. And one other thing that we were actually talking about for my brother's wedding is that because we're in the midst of this pandemic, they're hosting their wedding reception just on their acreage, and so they were talking about having a backyard wedding reception, and that is what they do in The Father of the Bride. So when they were planning this out, and Steve Martin's character hears about this, he's like, "Oh, this is amazing. This is my dream wedding, a backyard wedding. Fantastic. I can't wait. This is great." And then he like has a daydream of what's going to happen, and he's like at the barbecue flipping burgers, and everyone is dressed all casual, and he's making burgers for everybody, and they're playing yard games and things like that. But no, that's not what these guys are planning at all. The daughter and the mom and Frank, they have just the most elaborate things in place. They made like big arches and chairs on the lawn and just made it a really classy event, and that's not what he had envisioned, and so that's another thing that he really struggles with in the movie. There's just so much good stuff going on in this movie, and for the next couple ones, there's a lot of focus on the wedding and how it affects the people in the wedding, and I think that's why I like them so much, is because we get a lot of really good character moments and really exploring how people feel about what's going on in these weddings. So number 3 is The Father of the Bride. Really funny movie. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. There's a sequel, The Father of the Bride Part 2. I don't think it's as good. It's not really about a wedding. It's about them having kids. So I don't think the sequel is worth checking out, but definitely Father of the Bride from 1991 is worth checking out. And a fun story. Was it Brad Paisley or is it Tim McGraw? I'm going to look it up here really quick. So it was Brad Paisley. When Brad Paisley saw Father of the Bride in 1991 and he watched the movie and he saw the actress who plays the wife, he's like, "She's amazing. I'm going to marry her." And then he did. Like he met her and they dated and they're married. I don't know if they're still married or not, but he definitely married her after falling in love with her from watching the movie The Father of the Bride. So that's a fun story about that movie. We're going to move on to number 2, though. Number 2 is My Big Fat Greek Wedding. This movie came out in 2002, and this is just a gem of a movie. Even without like the wedding stuff, it's so funny. So the main character, her name is Mia. She comes from a very Greek family. Greek Orthodox, and everything that they do is Greek. The Greek people are a cut above everybody else. The father is hilarious. He believes that everything can be cured with just spraying Windex on a wound. If you have a wart on your face or a acne or whatever, you just spray Windex on it. If you burn your elbow, dip it in a pool of Windex. I can't imagine that that's good for you, so don't do it. But it's very funny, everything that this dad says. But so she's marrying someone who is, I don't know how to describe them. Their family, they're boring people. Actually, I do know how to describe them because the dad finds the perfect way to describe them in the movie. He describes his future in-laws as just dry toast. There's no butter, no jam, just dry toast. Just because they're boring, plain people. There's nothing exciting about them. But the Greek family, like, they're doing pig roasts in the yard, and everybody is named Nick, and they're just so entrenched in their culture and have such traditions that compared to this family who doesn't really have any of that, they seem super boring. And of course, in typical comedy fashion, a lot of things go wrong for the planning of the wedding and they have to fix a bunch of problems, but it's also a problem that the future husband is not Greek Orthodox, so they have to have him baptized, and they pick a godmother for him, and he's in a little kiddie pool that they dip his head in the church. They don't have like a big baptismal font or anything like that, so it's just a little kiddie pool that they're baptizing him in. It's very funny. I think the foundation of this movie is based on the Greek family as a whole, just their dynamic and everything that they say and interacting with them. And the future husband is a vegetarian, and the Greek family just like can't comprehend what being a vegetarian is. And she's like, "What do you mean you don't eat no meat?" And then everyone like stops and they're quiet because they're like, "You don't eat meat? What's the matter with you?" And then she goes, "Oh no, don't worry, it's okay. I'll make lamb." Because lamb doesn't count as meat, I guess, for the Greeks or something. It's very funny, everything that they say. I've really enjoyed this movie ever since it first came out. I would have been 9 when it first came out, so even like 9-year-old Nathan and now how old am I? 27-year-old Nathan really enjoys this movie. It's very funny. I haven't watched it in a few years, so I should give it a rewatch. Add it to the list of things I need to rewatch. But this movie and this wedding, it's all very funny. It's all very Greek themed. They have like the Greek flag painted on their garage door. They've got like big columns. They're talking about everything Greek. So if you come from a Greek family and you relate to this kind of wedding, this kind of experience, let me know. If you're Italian and you relate to the kind of wedding that happened in The Godfather, let me know too, because I am Ukrainian myself, so I know Ukrainian traditions and those kind of things. I don't know much about Italians and Greeks and other things. I only know from my own personal experience, which I think most people would agree with. They know from their own experience. But if you do a lot of studying, I guess, you look into other things, you can see how other cultures are. But that's not what I'm talking about right now. I have one more movie wedding to talk about. Let's get into it right now. The last one is from a movie called Steel Magnolias. This came out in 1989. This movie is funny and dramatic at the same time, but the opening of this movie, I think the first 20 minutes at least, is dedicated to the wedding of the character named Shelby. She's played by Julia Roberts, and they're getting married. Now, this movie takes place, it's somewhere in the South, because they have those Southern accents, and Dolly Parton is in this movie. But this wedding at the beginning, they have unique problems that they're trying to solve in order for the wedding. Like, they're also having the reception in the backyard, and there's all these birds in the trees, and they're trying to get these birds away so that the birds don't poop on all of their guests and their food and everything like that. So they're shooting guns to try and scare the birds away and throwing stuff into the trees, and it's just not working. So what they end up doing is getting a bunch of firecrackers and lighting them and throwing them into the trees. And so the sound of the firecrackers like pop, 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 and it sounds like machine guns going off. That's what finally scares all the birds away. And they're doing this. I think they attach the firecrackers to a crossbow, and they shoot the firecrackers into the tree with the crossbow while it's lit. And that's how they finally get these birds away. It's very, very funny. Everything that these guys do, it's a very Southern way to solve all of these problems. And we finally get to the wedding itself, and Julia Roberts is talking to her dad, and her dad is outside smoking, I think, and she's like, "Daddy, it's time. You gotta come in. It's time." And he turns around, he's like, "It's time." Well, and I think he puts out his cigarette, and they come inside, and he walks her down the aisle, and they have the wedding. Before the wedding starts, there's another really good moment where the mom, who's played by Sally Field, she's talking about the wedding colors, and she's like, her colors are pink and red. And Julia Roberts is like, "My colors are blush and bashful, mama." And just like the distinction between colors and their names is also very funny. But then we have the crown jewel of Southern things that they do at this wedding. So the husband got to have a cake. They had a main wedding cake, and then the husband also had a cake made just for himself, and he had commissioned a red velvet cake that is in the shape of an armadillo. And it looks like a real armadillo on a plate, and they're just cutting it up, and it's bright red inside, and people are eating this armadillo. And there's a character played by Shirley MacLaine, who I talked about last week. She's in The Apartment. She's also in this movie, and she plays a character named Weezer, who is just a grouchy, angry old lady, and just everyone hates her. She's really unpleasant to be around, but they're friends with her at the same time for whatever reason. So they invite Weezer over, and she goes to have a piece of this cake, and the guy who's serving the cake takes a huge cleaver and he cuts off the tail end of the armadillo and gives that for her to eat. And she's just so insulted, and the guy who served her the piece thinks he's hilarious. There's a lot of really good, fun stuff going on at this wedding, and I think that you need to have fun and levity when having wedding scenes in movies, because everyone's been to weddings. I've been to a lot. Me personally, I've been to a lot of weddings in the last few years. I think people get to a point where they're almost weddinged out. Like, my own wedding was over 4 years ago already, and I've been to a lot of subsequent weddings after that with all my friends getting married. Not that I don't want to attend and be with my friends as they celebrate getting married and stuff. It's exhausting when most of your summer is going to weddings, and sometimes you have winter weddings and things like that. Like, I'm going to a wedding on Saturday, and then I have another one in like 2 weeks after that to go to. So there's lots of weddings all the time. So I think when you're seeing weddings in movies, you got to do things that are unique and fun and different so that you can enjoy it as a viewer, as opposed to like, oh, here I am listening to the vows again, and the generic I love you vows and all of these different things. So those are my top 5 movie weddings and all the different reasons that I like them. All of these movies are worth watching. You should check them out. I will run them through one more time for you guys. So number 5 was The Godfather from 1972, Crazy Rich Asians from 2018. Number 3 was Father of the Bride, 1991. Number 2, My Big Fat Greek Wedding from 2002. And then the number 1, Steel Magnolias from 1989. Just to brace yourselves, though, if you do watch Steel Magnolias, it is not all happiness and comedy throughout the movie. It is a drama, so things do get heavy and things happen that are very dramatic, so just go into it knowing that it's not a complete 100% comedy. That's it for today, though. That's all I have to say about movie weddings. So my question for you guys today is, what movie weddings do you really enjoy? Anything that really strikes you as memorable in a movie wedding? Please feel free to let me know by reaching out. You can find me on Twitter at Pottle Nathan, and you can follow the show at Movies Are Awesome Podcast on Instagram. Also, you can email the show. All of that information is in the show notes below. If you haven't done so, please feel free to subscribe to the show. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and a whole bunch of other places. Thank you so much for listening to today. I understand today's topic might not be something everyone's really interested in, so if you stuck around and you listened to it, thank you so much. It's kind of a niche topic. But that's all I have to say about movie weddings, so I'm gonna go pack and hop on an airplane tomorrow. And remember, if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.